The Little Red Book it was a compilation. It's a book of quotations from Mao Zedong. It's basically Mao Zedong's Twitter page. So you have to understand that at the time that they were making the Chinese Revolution, um, 1930s, 1940s, a lot of the population were illiterate. And so Mao wrote in a style where it was easier to memorize. And so a lot of the political training that the Chinese military had was done for memorization because not everyone could read at that point, right? There's a song, there's a song that's called the 8 rules of attention and the 9 points of discipline or something like that. But it's like a popular patriotic song in China. But it was this song they taught all the Chinese People's Liberation Army soldiers. That was the rules, and they had to remember the rules, and they didn't have them down because a lot of them were illiterate. So they had this song, and it's like dun 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 dun. Pete Seeger actually recorded his own version of it, which I think is pretty neat. But it was to memorize the rules. So a lot of the quotes from Mao are very concise. He's speaking in like little short paragraphs, right? And so a lot of Mao's essays. And then also you'll notice that Mao writes in a very Confucian style. And Mao was influenced by the literary style of Confucius, the father of Chinese civilization. He writes about the 10 great relationships and the 4 great flaws and the 5 great thises and the 7 great that's, right? And why does he write that way? So you can memorize it, right? You can memorize. The first one is this, second one is this, third one is this, right? It's for memorization. So you have to understand that's the literary style that Mao is using. And it sounds very mystical to us. A lot of Americans, we get all like, whoa, it's like, but no, it's not trying to be mystical. It serves a real pragmatic purpose, right? It's the style of Confucius, but it's for memorization. And so Mao has this style of writing where he's very to the point and very concise, right? So during the 1960s, Lin Biao, who was a leader of the People's Liberation Army, who was a close associate of Mao, is considered one of the fathers of the Cultural Revolution. He decided to give every soldier a book of quotations from Chairman Mao. And originally it was blue. It was blue. And it was just when you joined the army, you got your kit and you got your gun and you got your bag with your pants and your shirt, and you also had this little blue book full of quotations from Mao Zedong. And originally the Little Red Book has an introduction from Lin Biao. Lin Biao says Mao Zedong is the greatest Marxist-Leninist in all history. And the Little Red Book, it was because Mao was kind of falling out of favor, right? The Great Leap Forward happened, and the economic results of the Great Leap Forward were not good, right? The Soviet Union had cut off China. China tried to continue speeding ahead with industrialization. Didn't work out too well. There were some problems, obviously. And they had some pretty big economic problems, and so Mao was kind of falling out of favor. And so the beginning of the Cultural Revolution was basically Mao was trying to mobilize society, to push back against Liu Shaoqi. Liu Shaoqi was this pro-Soviet guy. He was like more favored by the Soviet Union, and he was critical of Mao. And so they were kind of mobilizing the cult of personality around Mao, the worship of Mao, the mass movement around Mao. They were kind of mobilizing that as a way of beating back Liu Shaoqi. So the Little Red Book, they were giving all the soldiers this book of quotations from Mao. And then they made it red, because red is more communist, obviously. And they started distributing it among the population at large. And, when they had the Cultural Revolution, the groups they called the Red Guards, which were students who ran around making sure the party line was being enforced everywhere. And, they would, change the names of stores to be more communist. If your store was called like the Imperial Grocery Store, you can't have imperialism. So they would change it to the Communism Grocery Store. They were going around changing, breaking ancient temples and destroying statues and trying to make society in line with communism. And they carried around the Little Red Book as their like sacred book, right? And it's this book of quotations from Mao Zedong. Now, interestingly, Lin Biao tried to overthrow Mao. He like did a coup attempt against Mao, and like tried to fly away, and his plane crashed. He was trying to get to the Soviet Union. So actually, after they announced what had happened with Lin Biao, all the school kids cut the first 2 pages out of the Red Book, the introduction by Lin Biao, because Lin Biao was no good. So they cut him out of the Red Book. They canceled him. They ripped him out. So if you have a little Red Book from China that's old enough, it'll often have 2 page stubs for the Lin Biao introduction that was cut out and thrown in the garbage. But yeah, it was kind of the symbol. It was an icon of the Cultural Revolution. It was the ideological textbook of the Chinese Communist Party during the Cultural Revolution. And you can still get it. They still have it in China. And you can still buy it. But it's no longer like held up the way it once was. At one point that was like the sacred book in China. It's not that anymore. It's understood that this is an important book of quotations from a leader of the founder of the country, great revolutionary who defeated the imperialists and started us on the road to industrializing as a country, but he also did this awful thing called the Cultural Revolution. So he's a complex figure, and the Little Red Book is still studied in China. It's still valued, but it doesn't have the central role that it once had, right? And I mean, I remember what was funny is when I was in high school, that was when I first got the Little Red Book. The Little Red Book is a very patriotic book, right? There's a chapter, Building Our Country Through Diligence and Frugality, right? I mean, it's like I remember like one of my teachers saw that I had the Little Red Book, and he said, "Oh, what's this?" And he opened it. It's like, for the good of the country, the minority must submit to the majority, and everyone should be loyal to the homeland. He's like, wow. He's like, I agree with this. I thought it was really funny. He was like a right-wing Republican, but he agreed with it. I mean, it's a very patriotic text, right? It's about loving the homeland, loving the country, hating the imperialists, socialism and communism. In order to have a revolution, you must have a revolutionary party. It's a great book. I recommend you read it. A Little Red Book, right? The Little Red Book. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge and important book. At one point, it outsold the Bible. More copies of it were selling than the Bible, and it's an important textbook of Chinese communism.